Good afternoon, Sue. Good afternoon, Sue. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm really, really well, Jackie. How are you?
Really well as well. Thank you. I thought that having you on would be a great place to start for people building some skill around getting their story and their facts together as part of preparation or as part of being able to communicate. Because a lot of challenges in our lives that have that legal component has the ability to communicate facts in a way that can be understood. And I think, it's certainly not a skill that is common. We have to learn it as lawyers to fit into this as well. And I know that you teach a lot of people how to put together a book and put together stories. So I really wanted to hand over and really get your wisdom from you about how you help people and where they start to even start putting their story together.
Okay, so thank you for allowing me to share and to hopefully help your audience. So I help a lot of people and from various backgrounds as to, them wanting to write their story. So it is, some are business owners, and I'm not saying that business owners don't have traumatic experiences, because we do. I can speak from personal experience, but I do get a lot of people that also have been through some kind of trauma, and whether that, be anxiety and depression, domestic violence, whatever it is, I do help a lot of those kind of people as well. Now, writing your story now, whether you actually write it to publish, you don't necessarily have to publish the book if you don't want to. However, a lot of people do end up doing that, because once they start to write and they're healing themselves and realizing how powerful it is to actually write your story, they then realize and sort of go, well, hang on a minute, maybe I can help other people with my story. And which they can, because there's so many people that are going through, whatever the situation is. It won't be exactly the same as yours, but they will be on varying levels of what you've been through. And they can then go, well, oh, wow, so she went through that. So, perhaps you can sort of take that on board and go, well, I don't want to do that part. So now that I know what she did to change course, I can now do that. So in that way, it's really, really powerful and helpful for the reader that's reading it. And of course, I do say to people that if it is like domestic violence, for instance, that they do seek legal advice with someone like yourself, so that they are covered, and to make sure that they're protected, because, you got to be really careful what you put in and what you don't put in. And there are ways around it. Like you could put it into a book that's fictional instead. So that way you are a bit more protected. And especially if there's children involved too, they're protected, so that you're not sort of bringing the real names into the world, and slightly adjusting maybe the story a little bit, just to make sure that, that you definitely are, protected in all shapes and forms and whatnot. So, yeah, I pretty much, that's what I do. I help them write the story, because, when you start to write a book, it's a very big undertaking to write a book. A lot of people go, wow, where do I even start? I think the very first thing is that you need to, well, what's the goal? What book do you want to write? Like, what is the story? And if you're not 100% sure, this is what I recommend, and I offer a free 30-minute heartstorming session where we can sort of discuss that, so you get a clear idea of what your book is. But in saying that, there are a lot of people that start writing their story and go, it's just not feeling right. And a lot of them go, like, then we sort of brainstorm, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's what I should be writing about. So they sometimes, start working on one and then change to another, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, that first one that they may have started may be just completely shelved and forgotten about. However, it could maybe just a story that you tell later on. It's just not the one you're going to, talk about now. So, but yeah, I think the best thing, the first couple of things is finding what story you want to write, what's the end goal of that story, and then having a discussion with someone like myself as a book coach to, help you nut it out.
Help structure it, or what would be compelling, or pace, and all those sorts of things which are more relevant for good reading. But just in terms of getting it out, do you suggest that people try and do it sequentially, or do you suggest that people take notes and then recompile it sequentially, or how do you get people to actually get it out of them?
So my advice is always write the last chapter first, so that you know where it's going to end. There's a lot of people, this is where they come unstuck and just go, you know what, it's all too hard, can't do it, and they walk away. So if you know where it's going to end, then it's easier to write the story that leads to that ending. Now, in saying that, also what, I don't say let's start at the introduction or chapter 1, and then we go 2, 3, so on. No, I think, like what you said, either you take notes, but I like to say, when you wake up in the morning, that is if you're a person that's going to write in the morning, but on that particular day, what I suggest is you say, what do I feel like writing about today? What is front of mind that I need to perhaps get out, and write about that. It could be chapter 8, doesn't matter, but just write it, and then that's where we just pull it all together at the end. It doesn't, and even when you say, well, that's chapter 8, it may end up being chapter 4. So it's just writing about what is feeling right for you at that moment in time. It doesn't all work, and that may not necessarily work for everyone either. Some people might go, I just want to start at chapter 1 and then move, and that's okay. It's whatever works for you.
Yeah. As you say, whatever works, but you found that what best works is to start at the end, and then to write what feels like what you want to write about, I guess. And what you've got in your mind at the time.
So part of my coaching program is we do work out the outline of the book. So we figure out the chapters. And again, they're not set in stone. As I said, chapter 8 might end up being chapter 4. But it's a bit of a structure, a bit of a guideline. And then you can sort of go, oh, that's right, I was going to write about this bit. That's what I feel like writing about today. So let's pull that out and let's write about that.
Good. And so those who are writing autobiography, how do you really get them in to recall things as best they can? Like if they have sort of glossed over a period of their life, but actually there has been some relevant things that happened there, do you have some techniques that you dive in with people to get them to remember detail that they may have not thought about for years?
Yes, I have a few. One is we just brainstorm and talk, but the other, I have a couple of processes that I use to help unblock. And it's also for healing, not just to unblock, to heal as well. But that is where I bring my art into it, because I'm an art therapist as well. So, and there's a couple of processes. One is a canvas and the other is just paper, pen and markers. And the reason I've got the two different ones is because some people, if they're already anxious and they've got to come to a blank canvas, they're going to get even more anxious. And I completely get that. Hence why I have this other one that is just as powerful, if not more powerful. So, and easy too, if it's someone that has, hasn't got paints lying around, but they usually there's coloured markers or something. I mean, text is something, or pencils even. There's usually people have got more access to that. So then we just, utilise that, and it's very powerful.
That's amazing. Yeah, okay. I hadn't really thought about, I have thought about how cathartic telling your story can be, but the healing process of the unblocking throughout. Yeah, that's very powerful.
Mm.
So a lot of people that are coming to you are obviously then choosing to tell their story. But there will be others who are, facing a court process, who have to get their story down into some kind of affidavit form. And of course, the lawyer would help with the legalese side of things, but you need to sort of prepare your story to a degree to be able to tell it to the lawyer in the first place. And so there's also the time pressure and the anxiety that is surrounding a deadline to have it done by. Like there's no choice. It's not, I'm ready to do this. So have you worked with people who are under some excess stress, or had a time yourself where you've had excess stress and what you've been able to rely on to get through that period?
Yes. So again, what I briefly mentioned to you, I had cancer a few years ago. And so I thought, wow, this is interesting. How do I get through this? Now, luckily, I'm a very positive person and I completely put it out of my mind. But a lot of people can't. They just live and breathe it, which is the biggest thing that you shouldn't do, because that's what anchors it in and, makes it worse. So, but this is where I bring, again, that art process into it, because when you're doing that, and even just writing or the art, both of those creative techniques keep you present. And that's the secret. Being completely present is taking your mind off everything else that's going on around you. And so it's allowing you to just completely focus on what you're doing right then and there, and then you get it done.
It just flows if you can be present.
It really does. But helping, it's really helpful to speak to someone and be able to, talk things through. Yeah, like when, for instance, I know how to do a lot of this on my own, but I still was a part of a group that was support, like that. It's a charity organization locally to me that look after people going through cancer. So it was really good to have a group of people I could talk to about anything that was going on. However, I think it was the opposite. I was helping them. But that's okay. But it was helping me because I felt useful and felt really good that I was able to inspire and help them.
Yeah, it's interesting that you were talking about the worst thing you can do is live and breathe the diagnosis or the cancer. And I guess, that can be the same with some, huge challenge in your life. If that is the only focus that you've got and you're living and breathing that anxiety and that tension all the time, it's not going to be helpful for anything, is it?
No, exactly right. And I know it's really, really challenging, because I know I was caught up in a legal battle which had nothing to do with me, but I got dragged into the middle of it, and it gets pretty ugly. So I understand, and I was getting hounded left, right, and center, and I'm like, but hang on a minute, this has got nothing to do with me. Leave me right out of it. In the end, they did, but it was really horrible. But again, I tried so hard. Well, not tried, I did it. I just completely tried to block it out as much as possible and think of anything else but that, because it just festers if you keep thinking about it, and really gets you so anxious that it's unhealthy.
Yeah, very much so. Yes, the anxiety festers. That is such a visual sort of word, isn't it?
Yes.
And having said that, because of course it's a very emotional time, when you are trying to get out the facts of your story, how do you help people to work through what is factual versus what is emotive or imagined, or is there an element of working out the truth as part of storytelling process as well?
Well, yeah, I think that it comes down to the discussions that we have, like with the client,
Mm.
and as we're talking about it, it does come out that, oh, well, hang on a minute, I don't know if that actually did happen, so it does come through as we're talking about it.
Mm.
And then, when I'm looking at what they've written too, if it sort of seems a bit strange, I'll question it
Mm-hmm.
as well. And then they can say, oh, well, no, that actually didn't really happen. I thought it did, but it actually didn't, or something. So, we can pick it up in those ways as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's fascinating. And it's something that I've thought about for a long time, that we rely so heavily, particularly in the legal system, on, witness statements. But, our truth is very subjective, and our memory, what we latch onto memory-wise is also very, very different from different people. And particularly when you're having to recall things that happen, 10, 20 years ago, potentially.
Mm.
The memory is very interesting. And I mean, you've already mentioned helping people to unblock some memories that they may have either consciously or unconsciously put to one side, potentially because of trauma. But when I guess, how does it present when the memory's not clear? Because I have seen people, when they gloss over a particular section, and obviously then that is something for me to dive deeper into and ask a whole lot of questions. But how are other ways where there can be questionable things that are red flags for you when people are remembering parts of their story?
Well, I think that, and this probably more would come out in the art process, that when we do that, because when they do it, it's quite amazing, the things that come up, because as they're drawing it, I'm asking questions and we're talking and we're discussing what's going on. And then all of a sudden, I'll see something in the drawing. They may not see it yet, but, then all of a sudden, I'll say to them, can you see what's going on there? And they go, no. And then I'll ask a few more questions, and then all of a sudden, they'll look down and they'll be like, oh my goodness, I can see that now, and then they can go, oh my goodness, I'd forgotten that. And that's, and then certain things that, appear in the drawing, reminds them of things that, they've forgotten. But it also, the things that come up as we're talking, they'll be like, oh, wow. Oh, yeah, I didn't realize that. And yeah, that's just, so as you say, it's been locked away, and, they're unconsciously, they just like, throw away the key type thing, which I understand, because it's too painful. But all of a sudden that comes to the forefront, and then they get these ahas of like, whoa, okay, that makes sense now. I now understand why I do what I do now because of that. And they could never explain it, but all of a sudden they do. And, and I just want to also mention that when we do this process, it's very gentle. I don't take them back to traumatic things. It's all a nice, gentle way of remembering, and getting those, oh, wow. Yeah, that makes sense now. So it's gentle. It's not taking them back into the actual trauma, which is, very wrong to do that.
And I mean, what I'm hearing from you as well is that, a lot of this, particularly people's shift in awareness, is around having the feedback and support of the process.
Yes. Yep.
And finding the right person to help them through that, because again, I mean, you're helping people once they come to the choice of doing their writing, and certainly your lawyer's not qualified to help you dive into traumatic and unblocking experiences. And so, as you said, you also have a therapy background as well. And so the importance of having someone to help support you through the process that aren't friends or family that would weigh in potentially unhelpfully.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm on the outside. So I'm not attached to it. So I think that in most instances is the best thing, because I'm not emotionally attached, and I'm not going to give that feedback that a family member would.
Who have some kind of stake in your story, or wanting you to be cast in a certain light instead of or trying to protect you as well.
And that's the thing. Thank you. I was about to say, that they think they're protecting you, which of course they are, but in some ways you need to let this go, because, and this is one of the big things that people don't realize, that if you let these kind of things fester inside you, they end up turning into disease like cancer. This is why you need to get rid of all of that. Now, again, if you just write things down, whether it be to supply to you or to put it into a book, after that, well, I don't know, maybe legally you can't burn it, but, we could burn it and, be done with it. So you can do it just to be able to release what's going on. You don't actually have to, become a #1 bestseller. However, I'm sure that the story would be amazing enough to help others. So
yeah, and sometimes if that's what we can focus on as something to give back because of what we've learned, what a lovely thing to be able to help someone else from our own experiences. But it's interesting as well that the catharsis of actually going through a process of putting your story together, whether it is voluntarily for a book or otherwise, also lends itself to what I sometimes say, that dispute resolution actually can be healing if you come through the process in a very conscious way. It's not that you necessarily heal a relationship or heal the other person, because it's not your responsibility, but certainly some healing for yourself.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah. That other person is not your responsibility, as you say. You are your responsibility. No one else is going to look after you if you don't. So you need to make sure that you do look after yourself when you're going through that process, so that you do come out of it stronger and more resilient at the end.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Sue, you've certainly helped us build some skills, and I've got a few things that I will rattle off in my outro when I tell people what the takeaways are from our chat, which has been brilliant. Where can people find you if they feel like having you help them through the process would be worthwhile, or even just for your art therapy as well?
Yeah. So I have got probably the best thing is I've got a page that's got a whole heap of free gifts on it. And on there is also down the bottom where they can schedule a free session with me as well. So that is www.authoracademy.com.au/gifts, GIFTS.
Yep. Wonderful. And we'll make sure that that link is in the show notes so people can go back to the episode and just scroll down and hit that link. So as Sue said, plenty of free stuff, but there's also what's a free half hour with you.
Yes.
Wonderful. I think you've certainly got, as well, like a network of others around you that if you can point people in the right direction as well, if they at least have somewhere to start.
Definitely, yes.
Wonderful. All right. Again, Sue, thanks so much for your time and your wisdom, and sharing with people a bit of your skill about how to get their story out.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Jackie.